Some players are all about the numbers, right? The goals, the trophies. But then, every once in a while, a player shows up who's just different. Someone who's bigger than the game itself. A talent so huge it just can't be contained by the pitch. And that, right there, is where we start our story today, with football's very first superstar, George Best. And that's the thing you've got to get about him. We're talking way before big money endorsements, before social media. George Best was global. He wasn't just some guy who was good at kicking a ball. He was a full-blown cultural icon. I mean, with his pop star looks and that rebel vibe, they literally called him the fifth Beatle. He perfectly captured that whole swinging 60s thing and dragged football, kicking and screaming, into a whole new level of fame. So, how did it all start? Well, for that, we've got to go back to Old Trafford, the theater of dreams. A fearless kid from Belfast is about to show up and completely change the game for Manchester United, and really, for football itself. 17. Seriously, just let that sink in for a second. At 17, most kids are just hoping to get a pro contract someday. George Best? He was already making his debut for Manchester United. And listen, this wasn't just some hopeful kid getting a token game. Oh no. The second he set foot on that grass, everyone knew a phenomenon had just landed.
So what made him so special? It was pure, raw electricity. I mean, look at this. He didn't just run at defenders, he danced around them. It was like the ball was just glued to his feet. He could stop on a dime, change direction, and leave a whole line of defenders just, tangled up and wondering what just happened. It wasn't just about beating his man, it was about the way he did it, with this incredible, almost arrogant, beautiful style.
All right, so every legendary player has that one year, right? That moment where everything just clicks. For George Best, that year was absolutely 1968. This was the year he didn't just play well. He conquered Europe and basically booked his spot among the all-time greats.
And what a year it was. I mean, just look at this. In May, he's a driving force behind Manchester United winning their first ever European Cup. He even scores a massive goal in the final. And you have to remember, this was a huge deal for a club still healing from the Munich air disaster. Then, just a few months later in December, he gets the ultimate individual prize, the Ballon d'Or. At just 22 years old, he was officially the best footballer on the entire planet. Incredible!
But here's the thing, 1968 wasn't just a flash in the pan. It was the year that built the foundation for his entire legacy. He wasn't just United's star anymore. He became a part of the club's DNA, a core piece of its identity. And a huge part of that identity was this thing they called the United Trinity. And let me tell you, this wasn't your average front three. This was a perfect storm. You had the elegance and power of Bobby Charlton, the killer goal-scoring instincts of Dennis Law, and then you had the wild card, the unpredictable, dazzling magic of George Best. Put them together, they were just unstoppable. And you can't talk about his legacy without talking about the shirt, the number 7 at Manchester United. Today, that number is legendary, it's iconic. And while sure, other people wore it before him, it was George Best's swagger, his genius, that turned it into something sacred. He's the one who set that impossibly high standard for all the legends who came after, guys like Cantona, Beckham, and Ronaldo. Okay, so behind all that flair and style, the numbers actually back it up. I mean, check this out. 179 goals in 470 games. For a winger who's not supposed to be the main goal scorer, that is absolutely ridiculous. It proves he wasn't just about the fancy footwork. This was consistent, game-changing talent that brought 2 league titles to the club and really defined an entire era. And look, this really gets to the core of his story, because it's complicated. It's no secret that George Best had his struggles off the pitch, a really turbulent personal life that, a lot of the time, overshadowed his career. But what's so amazing, what's so remarkable, is that through it all, his genius on the football field never went away. It was always there. It just goes to show you what kind of pure, natural-born talent we're talking about here. Which brings us to the big question, right? The one that people have been arguing about in pubs and stadiums for decades. You think about Pelé, he was perfection. Maradona had that fire. But when you talk about just pure, raw, God-given footballing talent, was anyone ever better than George Best? His story is, well, it's brilliant, it's beautiful, and yeah, it's a little tragic. It's a reminder that sometimes the greatest gifts are also the most fragile. And that, right there, is his legacy.